Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to dive into a completely different kind of spiritual guide. So often we're handed these step-by-step blueprints for perfect peace, usually written by gurus from a very safe, detached distance. Well, Henri Nouwen was the exact opposite. This guy was an absolute academic superstar. He held incredibly coveted tenure positions at Notre Dame, Yale, and Harvard. Yet beneath all that glittering resume stuff, he wrestled intensely with loneliness and just this paralyzing need for approval. But rather than hiding it, Nouwen actually abandoned the absolute peak of human success to write from the raw, messy trenches of real human struggle. He essentially became a pioneer of vulnerability. He centered his life on this incredibly countercultural idea. Our wounds are not obstacles to our spiritual life. They are our spiritual life. It's a total paradigm shift, right? Because instead of airbrushing our flaws to project this image of perfect capability, Nouwen argues that sitting with our pain actually transforms our scars into the exact entry point for grace and healing. Which brings us to a very real question right out of the gate. Are you totally exhausted by the relentless need to prove your worth? It's literally a modern epidemic. We live in a society that basically demands we hustle for conditional acceptance, teaching us from day one that our value has to be constantly earned and defended. And let's be honest, it is utterly exhausting. Nouwen actually diagnosed the root of this exhaustion. He synthesized all our societal anxieties into what he brilliantly called the 3 lies of the ego. First up, there's I am what I do. That's the trap of relentless performance and just nonstop productivity. The second is I am what I have, this huge anxiety-inducing trap of status and possessions. And the third lie is I am what others say, the completely paralyzing need for popularity. Building your entire life on this kind of ledger system of conditional acceptance, well, eventually it's just going to make you spiritually sick. Now, to escape those exact lies, Nouwen made a dramatic, almost unbelievable pivot. For decades, he was caught in the absolute tyranny of upward mobility in the Ivy League, totally fueled by that core belief that I am what I accomplish. And you know what? It left him intensely lonely. So in 1986, at 54 years old, he did the unthinkable. He resigned from Harvard and moved to the L'Arche Daybreak community in Toronto. It's a home where people with and without intellectual disabilities live life together. He quite literally traded massive intellectual prestige for a radical downward mobility. The culture shock was absolute. His Harvard brilliance meant literally nothing here. Instead, he was assigned as the primary caregiver for Adam Arnett, a young man with severe hydrocephalus who couldn't speak, couldn't walk, and couldn't dress himself. Suddenly, this world-renowned academic genius was completely out of his depth. He was spending his mornings navigating a really grueling routine of managing seizures, bathing, and spoon-feeding. It was the complete and total opposite of academic stardom. It was the quiet, hidden ministry of the basin and towel. But right there in that suburban bathroom, Nouwen had a massive, life-changing realization. He wrote, "Adam did not show me his hidden treasures by telling me things. He did it by his total vulnerability. In his presence, all my anxieties about whether I was doing a good job, whether I was valuable, or whether I was loved just melted away." Through Adam, Nouwen learned that a human being is infinitely valuable simply by existing. Adam was producing absolutely nothing for society, yet he was so deeply loved. And that realization finally shattered Nouwen's lifelong addiction to achievement. So, what's the ultimate antidote to those exhausting lies of the ego? It is recognizing your core human identity as the beloved. Nouwen points back to the baptism of Jesus, where a voice from heaven said, "You are my beloved," well before Jesus had ever performed a single miracle or preached a single sermon. Living as the beloved means waking up to the profound fact that you are uniquely chosen, blessed, and unconditionally loved before you ever produced a single thing. It completely, 100% invalidates the ego's ledger. But of course, once we actually catch a glimpse of that identity, the sheer noise of everyday life immediately tries to drown it right back out. To protect it, Nouwen designed this beautiful blueprint he calls spiritual respiration. It's a continuous loop, exactly like breathing. We have to inhale contemplation, silence, and depth, and then exhale action, justice, and service. And this respiration relies on actively navigating 3 very distinct spiritual movements. Let's dive into that first movement. It's an inner posture, moving from loneliness to solitude. Loneliness is that anxious, frantic void that kind of makes us use people as commodities. When we're lonely, we demand that others fix our isolation, which just leads straight to massive codependency. Solitude, on the other hand, is this sacred space where we actually bravely sit still with our inner demons and our poverty without running to distractions. Because when we stand our ground in solitude, we stop using people to heal us, and we actually become free to receive them as gifts. And making that internal shift completely unlocks the second movement, the outer posture, moving from hostility to hospitality. See, when we're insecure, anyone different feels like a major threat, which prompts us to build these huge defensive walls. But Nouwen beautifully redefines hospitality here. It's not about entertaining guests or throwing a good party. It's about creating a spacious, non-judgmental sanctuary where strangers can just drop their defenses. You start seeing differences as gifts rather than threats. Which brings us to the third movement, the divine anchor, moving from illusion to prayer. The absolutely exhausting illusion of modern life is that we are somehow in control. And we often treat prayer like it's a transactional boardroom meeting where God just has to serve our agenda. Nouwen completely flips this. He says prayer is actually a systematic unmasking of our illusions. It's the act of stepping out of the driver's seat and finally laying down the heavy burden of trying to be your own God. You realize you are just a finite child resting safely in an infinite presence. With those three movements grounding us, we can finally look at Nouwen's truly revolutionary paradigm for helping others, the wounded healer. The old model basically demanded that spiritual leaders project this flawless, intellectual perfection. But honestly, that just creates a massive chasm of shame between the helper and the person hurting. The Nouwen model argues that our acknowledged pain actually becomes our healing power. When we offer the bridge of shared vulnerability, admitting that, hey, we too know what it means to be anxious or lonely, it actively removes the shame of suffering for the other person. As Nouwen reached the end of his life, he found his ultimate spiritual vision by staring for hours at Rembrandt's famous painting, The Return of the Prodigal Son. He mapped our entire character evolution through it, and he warned us of two huge traps. First, we get stuck as the younger son, the rebel driven by shame, desperately seeking love in all the wrong places. But the even greater danger for a lot of us is getting trapped as the older son, the resenter, who stays home, follows all the rules, but operates with this really cold, keeping score mentality of moral superiority and pride. But here is the profound realization. Nouwen realized that we cannot stay trapped as either son. The ultimate goal of human maturity is to actually step into the shoes of the merciful Father. In Rembrandt's painting, the father holds the broken son with both rough, masculine strength and soft, feminine tenderness. Becoming the father means finally letting go of the need to be validated and existing simply to offer a safe shelter and an inclusive homecoming for every weary traveler you meet. So how do we make this real? Nouwen grounds all of this philosophy in three very practical daily anchor disciplines. First, 10 minutes of solitude. Just sit in stillness, and when the anxiety speaks up, consciously remind yourself of your inherent worth. Second, relational hospitality. In your very next conversation, actively drop your own agenda and just create a spacious room for the other person to be truly heard. And third, the wounded healer reset. When someone shares their pain with you, resist the urge to play the flawless expert. Speak from our shared humanity and just say, I don't have all the answers, but you do not have to carry this alone. To close out this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Take a hard look at your own life right now. What exhausting illusions do you need to let go of today to discover that you are already the beloved? Seriously, you don't have to keep climbing that endless ladder of upward mobility. You can step off, drop your defenses, and just rest in the absolute fact that you are inherently worthy exactly as you are.